Hi everyone, I'm your IELTS tutor Jack, and in today's episode we are going to be answering lots of IELTS questions all about communication. Okay, so communication. This is a topic I've definitely seen in mock exams that I've done here. Some students have reported back to me that they've maybe had some questions on communication, so definitely an important one today. And just looking at today's list of language, we've got some lovely words related to communication. Got articulate, that's a good verb. Miscommunication, I think that's quite an easy one to get into our answers. And perhaps non-verbal. We see this word in TED Talks and things like that, non-verbal. This is the communication you do without words. So this language is all available in the IELTS Plus Total Speaking textbook, and you can find that on britplus.net. So, as I did last week, I would like to do this student challenge. So if you remember, last week was the first one we did, and what I want to do is give the students that are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast an opportunity to try your own answers so I can see. And I will give you feedback. If you give your answers in the comments section, I will give you some feedback. It's a part 1 question related to communication today. And this is what I'd like you to answer. Do you prefer to communicate via text or phone call? Text or phone call? Now, for me personally, I'm definitely a phone call guy. And I've heard that this is a bit of a generation difference, a generation gap, that perhaps younger generations, people in their 20s, prefer text messages. So I guess I'm revealing myself as older because I do like phone calls. I like to hear people's voice. So there's one more thing actually before we start, because I did get this interesting question from a student who said, Jack, you often say or when you answer. Is that okay? So they're asking, I sometimes say right, when I'm answering a question. And is that detrimental? Is that harmful to my score if I do the IELTS exam? The answer is no. In my case, because my sounds, so these are filler sounds, are actually content related. So if I'm thinking of an answer and I'm not sure what I'm like this, I'm using the sound because I'm not sure what I'm going to say. It's not because I don't have the language, it's because I'm thinking about the content I want to use in the answer. So as long as you don't do it too much and it's a content-related filler sound, you're fine. You won't be penalized. You won't be marked down for that. However, if you're doing it a lot and it's because you don't know the grammar or the language, then you will be penalized. That's a fluency issue. So I hope that helps. Don't worry, you can use or sometimes. Excellent. Well, let's get started. Part 1, question 1. How often do you communicate with your friends and family? I communicate with my friends and family fairly frequently, but it depends who we're talking about. A lot of my family live in the UK, and I live in South Korea. So we speak once a week, online call, we speak once a week. But of course, my friends and family in Korea, I contact them frequently through Kakao Talk, which is similar to WhatsApp. Next question. Do you prefer to communicate via text messages or phone calls? So this was our student challenge today. I prefer to communicate via phone call. I like to have the immediate feedback that comes from a phone call. I like to hear the emotion in someone's voice. And I like to chat. I think when you have a phone call, there's a little more small talk and chat, and it's less direct. So definitely, I'm a big fan of phone calls. Great. So just notice with my part ones, you can hear I always give a direct answer and I add one or two details, and I would like the same from you. That's a really good way of approaching part one. Don't say too much, but add one or two details. Great. Okay. Let's do our part two. So as usual, I'm going to go straight into part two. No 1 minute preparation. Our question today is, describe a time when you had an important conversation with someone. So quite past focused. Let's see how I do that, how we use the structure today. And I'm going to put 2 minutes on the clock. My time starts now. I'd like to tell you about a conversation I had with my ex-boss in England. When I was young, I was around 19 years old, maybe 20 years old, I decided that I'm going to stop my career in golf and move to Australia. It was a very sudden decision and a big decision in my life. I decided to do that when I was 20, which meant I had to tell my boss, I'm going to quit and I'm stopping my career completely and I'm moving to Australia. So I remember it was an extremely difficult conversation. I had to articulate my plans and reasoning. It was difficult to make him understand why I'm making this sudden big decision. But overall, it went well and he understood. So let me tell you a little more about this situation. I decided that golf as a career, as a teacher, wasn't for me. So I had to express how I felt about golf to him. I had to explain my plans and why I want to do what I want to do. And because he had invested a lot in me and we had a good relationship, and I didn't want there to be any miscommunication. As I said, it went well. He understood and we kept in contact. I went to Australia and we remained in contact while I was there. I think there may have been an opportunity for me to go back to that job when I moved back to the UK, but wow, that went so quickly today. I think that there were moments in that question where I was speaking a little slowly. I could have spoken a little quicker and fluently, but I'm pretty happy with that. I used some good language. I stayed on topic. I didn't repeat myself. So I'm pretty happy with that. It was, as you could tell, I remained with a past focus. You'll see in my textbook that I suggest in the second part of the structure, you should try to, if you can, move to the present tense, but if necessary, stay focused on the past. And that's what I did today. And I think that's everything that I want to mention. Let's go to part three. And our first part three question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of communicating via social media? In terms of advantages, I would say that it just makes it very easy to communicate with lots of people. It connects people all around the world and means that we get access to all these people that perhaps we wouldn't have had access to before. In terms of disadvantages, one of the big problems is that you don't have any gestures. You can't show your gestures really. And so non-verbal communication is different. The way that we solve that is through emoticons. And I think for some people, emoticons are great. They show your emotion that you can't do through words. But this is still a bit of a downside compared to speaking in person or over the phone. Good, so you'll hear I'm using some of today's language. Remember, if you're watching the video, I am highlighting that underneath as I'm speaking so you can keep track of the language I'm using. Let's go to the next question. How can cultural differences impact communication? This is a difficult question. I would say that there's so many cultural differences, and one of the big ones I experience here in South Korea is related to gestures. And we can be in the UK and America, we can use our gestures quite a lot. Our body, our hands, we are very expressive in our face. Whereas perhaps in East Asia, I think it's true for Japan, certainly in South Korea, they use less gestures and are less expressive in the face. And I think sometimes maybe there can be misunderstandings. I've certainly experienced in business where the non-verbals are so different and there can be some misunderstandings that happen through that. Okay, let's go straight on to the last question, which is, what role does body language play in effective communication? Well, this leads on from my previous answer. I think body language plays a really important role in adding context to what you're saying, or adding some extra nuance, expressing more than you can through words. So sometimes I think it really adds to a story. If you're telling a story, you can add excitement and enthusiasm through your body language. On the other hand, if you are feeling down and you're telling something that is a negative, you're feeling sad or something, you can add a lot through your body language and posture. So I think your body language, the way you use your body, your hands, your face expressions, is really important in communication. Good. I found those quite hard today, the part 3s. I don't know how you felt. Overall, I was happy because I was able to give direct answer, details, and then follow up with an example in most cases. And that's what I'd like you to try to do. And that will ensure that you're giving approximately 1-minute answers. That's what we want. And that is everything for topic 47, communication. Bit of a difficult one, but I think I did a reasonable job of using today's language. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Do remember, I really appreciate your likes, your comments, whether you're on a podcast platform or on YouTube. I appreciate you all, and I respond to everything. I will always give you an answer as soon as I can. So I hope you have a lovely week this week. We will be back next week with cooking. I love it. I love cooking. So I'm looking forward to next week's topic. So have a great week. Study very hard, and I'll see you next week for cooking.